Hey folks, assignment season. I wanted to put out a little video contextualizing some of the information on the first assignment for InfoVis that's just gone out on Canvas now. I thought it might be a little bit more digestible a way for me to explain some of the things that we're going to be doing. So let's get right into it. Yeah, that's not the right button, is it? I was really hoping for this kind of snappy energy where I'm like, hi everybody, let's do an assignment, but there we are, let's do it. Okay, the first assignment is about infographic design. It's going to be effectively a larger version of the stuff you're doing in the first couple of tutes. We're going to be using a tool called Infogram, which you should all be familiar with after doing tutes 2 and 3, which is effectively a bit like Figma or another one of those what you see is what you get design prototyping tools, except it lets you put in charts and simple data visualization. So it's a great way to lay out simple infographics in ways that are sort of really tricky to do if you're flipping backwards and forwards between something like Excel and Illustrator or whatever. Infogram makes it just so much more snappy. It's due March 28th, which sounds like it's a long way away, but is really only 3-ish weeks, so probably don't sleep on this one. It is, and I haven't got this on my slide, I realize, it is an individual assignment. All of our assignments in this course are individual. That means they're going to have much more of a focus on quality rather than effort. We're really making sure that this is not about doing a ton of work for this subject. It's about making sure you focus on getting that work just sort of sublime in the way it uses the space and time that it has. So focus on iteration, focus on getting everything just perfect, and you'll do really well. It's going to be requiring just a little bit of Excel work to get the data processed in a simple fashion. I hope you're all familiar with that. We'll maybe be covering it just a little bit in some of the tutorials as well. And it's going to be submitted through Canvas. You'll make it on Infogram, you'll drop a link, and then some documentation into Canvas directly. So I wanted to actually go through the assignment description on Canvas itself. So if you go to Assignments, which is now visible on the left over here, I should really full screen Canvas for this, shouldn't I? Why didn't I think of that? Okay, full screen in Canvas. Boom. I got my hotkey right, everybody. So full screen in Canvas, you should be able to click on assignment 1 there, and it'll take you through to this description. So when you go to submit, you do so up there. We're going to design an infographic from this provided data set, details of which down here, that is compelling, effective, and original. So we're going to keep coming back to those things. I'll be explaining not only what you're expected to do here, but how it will be marked. You're going to be doing it in Infogram, submitting it through Canvas. You're going to need to follow the process in the lectures and tutorials for the first couple of weeks of the course. That is, think about who's your user, so who's your audience, who's your context, sorry, what is your context, what is the purpose of the visualization, what is its key insights as an explanatory visualization, what are the things that it's trying to get someone to realize, and then what is the story, what's the narrative that you're going to use, the journey that you're going to take users on as they appreciate and digest your visualization. You're then going to be also assessed on the visualization itself, as well as a simple evaluation. So in one of the next tutorials, we're going to be going through how do you perform a usability evaluation of something like a visualization. How does that differ from simple evaluations, early user testing of other interaction design products? And then you're going to be documenting your user study, your intended narrative, so how you achieved that narrative, what you did in the user study, and then what, if any, changes did you make to the visualization based on the results of that user study, just straight into a formatted text box on Canvas. So let's talk about those submission instructions first while I'm on that. There'll be a link to your Infogram submission as the first thing you put in that text box. Please don't leave that out. If you leave that out, you're not going to get any marks for the actual visualization. And it turns out that the visualization is a large component of your marks. So you're going to have a link to Infogram, followed by 2 headings, one about your concept. That's where you're going to put the stuff on your intended narrative, how you aim to achieve it, a justification of what you're doing. And then another heading talking about your evaluation. That's where you're going to talk about the usability evaluation, what you did in response to that. Both of these should be short. I'm talking about maybe 2 paragraphs for each one. Somewhere between a third of a page and a page. If you go over a page for either of these, so that's a page for each one, then I think you have taken up far too much space and been too verbose. This is about quality, not quantity. It should not take you that long to explain the clear things in your concept and what strategies you use to achieve them. And it should not take you that long to explain what the tasks were in your usability evaluation, what the key failures were when users attempted to achieve them, and what the revisions that you made. I'm not looking for you to write an essay. I'm explicitly looking at how concisely can you explain this. I might actually put some of that in the description. When you read this, I may have already edited the description here on the submission instructions to just include something about the expected length. I'm talking about somewhere on the order of 2 to 5 paragraphs per section, no more than that. 5 is actually probably too many. I take that back. I'm talking about 2 to 3 or 4 paragraphs. Concision, brevity, they're the way to go. Let's take a look at the data set. So the elephant in the room in data visualization in 2021 is COVID-related data. And I told you we would be not spending all of our time on it, and that would be easy to do, but we are going to cover it because it's certainly topical, widely available, and the kind of thing that you can really put in a CV. It's something that in a year or so is going to be showing up a lot, and it's something that a lot of people are going to understand, and hopefully it can make a good portfolio piece for you. So what we've got here is COVID-related changes in how people move around, mobility data. This is actually taken from Apple, who did a really great thing early on in the pandemic, and make aggregate data about how much people were moving around on foot, in a car, and via public transport, available for many different countries, all indexed as a percentage of the activity of that kind back before the pandemic started. I think it's a really interesting data set, and it can really show how people's behavior has changed quantitatively. And so that's the primary thing that I want you to use to tell a story. You should take a look at the data. I'll actually pop it open in Excel after this video and show you, after this bit of the video, sorry, and we can have a quick look at it. But in addition to that mobility data, which is what you should use as your primary kind of insight generating thing for this visualization, we're giving you some COVID data to kind of contextualize it with. So all this data about new COVID cases that day, new deaths, new tests, new recoveries, new hospitalizations, etc. Those aren't supposed to be all used. In fact, a visualization that uses all of these at once would be terrible. Please do not do that. That will be a clear example of how you didn't read the instructions. You pick 1 or 2 things from the COVID data set that you feel back up or help contextualize what the story you're trying to tell from the mobility data set, because of course the mobility data is impacted by what was happening in the COVID situation at the time. So you use this as context for your primary variables, and you pick 1 or 2 that you feel tell a compelling story. So I would expect to see an infographic with multiple elements in it. I would expect to see type. You probably want to have multiple elements visualizing multiple parts of this as you build up towards the story that you're trying to tell, as you put things in context. One thing that I have done, because we haven't done a lot of data processing at this stage in the semester, is that in the data file, I've actually calculated 7-day rolling averages for all of those variables as well. In some cases, it may make more sense to use that if you don't want to focus on the weekly fluctuations. Obviously, how people move around on the weekend is very different to how they move around during the work week. And so a 7-day rolling average, which is just for each day showing the average over the previous 7 days. So like it always includes one weekend. You can use that smooth data in place of the daily data, if that makes more sense to you. Just obviously declare that on your visualization. It's something I've seen in a lot of COVID data, say testing rates. Testing rates and therefore confirmed cases tend to be different throughout the week. There are a lot more people who go and get tested on Mondays, for example, and it actually changes a lot in different countries. So if you look at the data for heavily Catholic countries in Europe, then obviously there's a lot less COVID testing happening on Sunday. That data is pushed forwards to Monday. People who observe different holidays, you tend to see less or more on the holiday, all that kind of stuff. So I want to go now to how are we going to grade this? So the first part of that story is that we use rubrics for grading in this course. So each of the learning outcomes in the course, so your ability to do data storytelling, your design quality, then one that's missing from this one is data science. There's not a strong data science component of this assignment, but that's criterion C, and then human-centered evaluation is the fourth one. We use these same rubrics for each of these qualities across the different assignments. What changes is which ones of them apply. So this one is A, B, and D. Your ability to do storytelling, the quality of your design and the way you carry that out, and the quality of your evaluation. So there's a description of each of these categories here and also on the unit schedule. But if you want to see what that means specifically in this context, for each of the assignments, we actually write a couple of dot points on what that means here. So let's tackle those quickly. Data storytelling is the student's ability to design compelling visual narratives around data, including the ability to develop and justify mappings appropriate for the context. So in other words, it's your ability to come up with a story, to execute on that story, and to make your point. So what does that mean in the context of this assignment? It means to clearly and concisely explain in the provided text box the story you're intending to tell. How do the choices, the design decisions that you've made make that story happen? And also to make sure that the narrative you're communicating is, and here's those three things I mentioned earlier in the video, is compelling in that it motivates people to believe or empathize or understand your point. Clear in that it's as simple as possible, and interesting in that it would be novel or surprising or original in some manner to the people who are intended to consume it. Again, if you're telling people something that they already know, it tends not to, well, be very interesting. So we do those same breakdowns for the other ones. So design quality here means clean, clear, communicative set of charts with nothing that shouldn't be there and everything that's necessary to understand it. Emphasizing visually the things that are important to your story and to your data mapping, using your data mapping to emphasize things, but also using things around it, like use of type, use of layout, use of annotations, use of text, etc. And then having an appropriate aesthetic for the story you're telling, but one that doesn't let other visuals get in the way of what you're trying to do. And then, of course, the evaluation. You want to show that you've been rigorous, but you're not expected to do a huge evaluation, so a small number of people, but that you've thought about what you're measuring, how you're measuring it, and what it means. You've got a clear plan, you've justified why that's the most important thing to measure here, and then you're telling us about what you found and how you changed it. It is, I think, much harder to write a small amount well than to write a large amount badly, and so that's why I want you to have experience doing that. Because let me tell you, it turns out to be much more useful for the real world to write one paragraph of high quality text that doesn't waste anybody's time than it is to write a 3,000 word essay about the same topic. We get you to write essays because we want to make sure that you know a lot, but you're in third year now, you're doing a design studio. I'm not interested in how much you know. I'm interested in how clearly, concisely, and compellingly you can articulate those things, how you can use what you know to put something on my screen that impresses me, something that is original, something that is compelling, and something that is as simple as possible and no simpler. So I hope that sounds like a good challenge. I'm really looking forward to seeing all the things that you put together. I think in the first couple of tutorials, it's been an amazing class. You've put together some really cool things. I'm loving the energy on Slack, and I'm super psyched to see what you come up with this stuff. As always, ask your tutors or me any questions that you might have about the assignment, and I'll see you in class.